and I'm assuming they're going to speak about a whole lot more interesting things. So I'm going to quickly start the stream, hand over to Emily, and enjoy.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for coming. I have never seen this many people in the Soho Clubhouse. Admittedly, it was half the size until quite recently. I can see so many awesome cyclists who I know in the audience. I think there is a great deal more long-distance expertise out there than there actually is up here. So I'm hoping that when we get to the Q&A, we'll get quite a lot of good discussion. So my name's Emily Chappell. I wrote a book about long-distance cycling called Where There's a Will, which I'm told I have to plug because Rapha have got a lot of copies in over there. And it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome Lael Wilcox to London. Yay! So I know I don't need to give Lael much of an introduction, but just so we can all dwell on her triumphs once more. So I think Lael came to everybody's attention when she set a very decisive new women's record for the Tour Divide, I think in 2015, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And then came to international acclaim when she won the Trans Am bike race in 2016. And usually when you say this, you say the women's section, obviously. Lael won the whole thing outright. It was one of the first times we'd seen this happen, and it was one of those moments, I think, where we all thought, wow, here we go, the future is finally here. So Lael has gone on to win pretty much everything and set various new records. She's also put huge amounts of time and effort and energy into getting as many other women on bikes as possible. She founded Anchorage Grit, which is, I think you could probably tell us more about that, but it's encouraging local girls and women to ride bikes and empower themselves. And the Lael Rides Alaska Scholarship, which helped support women to do enormous bike journeys within Alaska. And most recently, the Torino-Nice Rally, which, as you might tell from my terrible cycling tan, I rode last week along with Lael and her partner Rue and about 20 other women. So this is an incredible mountain route from Italy into France, back to Italy, back to France, and finally finishing on the seafront at Nice. Lael, can you tell us how this came about? Where did the idea come from?
Oh my gosh, I'm just buzzing to be here. It's just so wonderful to finally have met Emily last week at the Trino-Nice Rally, and
likewise.
I've heard about her for years, and I'm just so honored to be here in her presence and with everybody that came here. So thank you everybody for coming. This really means a lot. I feel a little overwhelmed. There's so many cool people here that I haven't met yet, but wonderful. Yeah, so Torino-Nice Rally, the easiest for me. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I'll take this one. Yeah, so easiest for me to kind of talk is just to go after questions. So the Torino-Nice Rally is what we did last week. It's a 700-kilometer route from Trino, Italy to Nice, France, over 10 mountain passes. The route was designed by James Olson. They host a yearly event the first week of September where it's not a race, but everyone meets together in Torino, and then the goal is to finish a week later for the finishers party in Nice. These are beautiful mountain passes, military gravel roads, tons of climbing, 15,000 meters of climbing over the 700 kilometers. And I've been looking at this route for years, just wanting to ride it, because anywhere there are mountains, I just look. And especially if people share photos, I think I want to be there now, or as soon as I can get there. And it just hadn't happened, but then I had been kind of mulling over this idea to have a women's bike packing challenge where basically we do the same thing, a group start, where everyone meets at a central place on the date prescribed, and then we all set off together, but everyone's self-supported, so you take care of your own needs, and then you just try to get to the end. Make friends along the way, share stories, leapfrog, but it's not a race. Because I guess the idea behind this is so many of the events I go to are races, which I love racing. I really love racing. I get to the start, I want to win. That's all I'm thinking about. But then I also want people to just ride bikes however they want to ride them. And I want to meet them and I want to talk with them. But if I'm racing, I'm not going to stop to talk. So if we take on a challenge with the idea that let's just get to the finish around the same time, then I'll take more of the time to visit, exchange ideas, camp together, find food, share stories, have an adventure. And so I feel like this format, this isn't original. Many people are doing events like this, but I feel like there should be more of it, and we should celebrate that.
So we had an amazing time, and I think it would be impossible to pick out any favourite moments because there were just so many. But nonetheless, Lael, I want you to give me just a few favourite moments. So I don't know, what was the best place that we camped, do you think, and how did that come about?
Yeah, the second to last night of the route, we camped in an olive orchard behind a church. Super lovely. And we just got the spot from locals in town, and they said, go up there, it's fine. There's a little water fountain across the street. Help yourselves. And that was my favorite. What about you?
I was actually going to say the same thing. It was, boringly, it was a really beautiful spot. And for me, the best bit was that there were quite a few of us camping there. And it was lovely because you got to see everybody else's setups. Everybody had a slightly different sort of tent or bivvy bag. And we all set up our little corners. And we had a hilarious dinner where we talked complete nonsense at each other and all got hoarse from laughing. And then the following morning, we woke up. And one of the women there had a coffee pot with her, and her thing every morning was to make coffee. So I was just sitting there in my sleeping bag, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. And Sarah came round and said, would you like a coffee? Which was wonderful. And then Gabrielle came along and said, would you like some almonds? So I was given a little handful of almonds. And then I think Gael came along and said, I've got some yogurts, would you like one? And Valerie brought me some cake. And Sophie brought me some chocolate, and I think then Lael and Rue came along and just took photos of me with my spoils. It was brilliant, and also I think my reputation precedes me. What was your best eating or drinking experience?
Best eating or drinking? I mean, this was my first time in Italy, so the route kind of skips back and forth between Italy and France through the Alps. And I think the best thing I had there was the espresso. It was just so good. And I had really looked forward to having all this pasta and gelato and pizza. And in the end, I was like trying to write stories and publish stuff while we were out there. So I was just scrambling, and I basically just ate bread. And that's about it. But, you know, it's like sometimes I think that's the beauty of it, is like you could focus on the food and just have the best meals. You could focus on your company. You could focus on the ride. But then if you just have a mix of all of it, sometimes it's the best.
I think that was definitely what I found. For me, this ride was...
it went out again.
Are we... Oh, wow. I'm just going to project really well. So for me, the ride was unusual because I normally ride alone. And I'm assuming that you more often than not ride alone. Mm-hmm. So having other people around was sort of 95% a joy and 5% a bit of a challenge. There were a few moments where I had to kind of drop back or go ahead and just take a deep breath. Lael, are you more of an introvert or an extrovert? How do you cope with other people around? I mean, are you a bit of both? Do you have moments where you wish they'd all go away?
I mean, I'm 100% an introvert. Like 4 years ago, this scene would have been like the biggest fear of my life. Like I see a sea of people and they're all shaking and I don't know what I'm going to do, but then I'm on my bike and that's where I feel grounded and home. So I spend so much time riding by myself, like riding from Alaska through Canada to the start of the Tour Divide, or through Canada to the start of the Trans Am, and that was my time to like center myself alone for thousands and thousands of kilometers. But I do really enjoy spending time with people too, but it's always so kind of special, especially on the bike. It's like you can't be intimidated for long if you're riding with people. Because everyone, it's like an equalizer. Everybody's just on their bike, just out there, just as scared as everybody else. And you make decisions together. You talk over things. Where should we camp? Where should we get food? What's going on with your bike? How can I help you? So that's why I love things like this, is because we're all together in a special moment. But yeah, definitely an introvert.
I think a lot of us are. I think this is why a lot of people get into cycling, then they discover all the other introverts. So we've, during the Torino-Nice rally, we had a WhatsApp group with everybody on it, and usually it was like, does anyone know if there's coffee up the road? And now, since we've all gone home, it's more, I miss you guys. And there was an interesting chat going on today where quite a few people were saying, I almost didn't come because I looked at you all on social media and I thought, I won't keep up, I will not be cool enough, and all the other doubts we have about ourselves. And it was quite interesting and also quite amusing because apparently literally everyone thought they didn't belong there. Do you ever feel like that? Have you in the past? And do you have any ideas for how we can overcome that, both in ourselves when we're looking to sign up for rides and meet new friends, and generally how can we make all of this more welcoming to those who are standing on the fringes?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely part of the welcoming aspect is being honest about your experiences, sharing your stories. If you feel like you had this experience, like let others know, like you could do this too. Maybe invite them in the first place, or just be yourself out there and don't worry about it. I mean, I actually don't feel like I'm not gonna make it because I'm like, well, my legs aren't gonna fall off. I mean, something is gonna go wrong every single long distance ride. Many, many things will go wrong that you can't anticipate and you're not happy about, but you just deal with it, right? So then it's like for the next one, you're still yourself, you're still at the start line, just see what happens. And then, I mean, I don't know, I guess the thing is the worst failure is not showing up. And then if something happens along the way that you can't finish the ride or whatever, you learn something out there and you already rode X amount of miles to get to that point. So that's all a win. The worst part is just not showing up because you don't feel like you're good enough. And I feel like I have dealt with that where people have said, what are you doing here? You're not gonna finish, you're not gonna get there. And then my immediate reaction is rage, where I'm like, what does this person mean? What do they think? Like not towards them, but I'm just like, I'll show them. And then I just want to beat them. And like that's like one reaction, but it's like, it doesn't have to always be about like beating people or like accomplishing something to feel like you should be there in the first place. You should definitely be there in the first place. If you're curious, if you're wondering what it's like, go check it out. And then if you don't like it, don't do it again. You know, it's like no problem there. It's like change your path or direction. But none of us would be here right now if we hadn't decided, let's go for a bike ride. Let's see what it's all about. Oh yeah, those were terrible shorts, or oh yeah, that was a bad route. But like you don't regret that experience. You just change it for the next time. But I did feel like, for whatever reason, every woman that was at this Torino-Nice rally felt some sort of self-doubt. And these are really experienced women in general. So then if the experienced ones are feeling that, then everyone's feeling it. And then we should just accept that and then just scare ourselves and do it anyway. And then be like the role model for your friend. Like they're like, oh, she did it, I could do it. I feel like I'm that person most of the time. They see a video of me and they're like, oh, she's pretty small, but she did it, I could do it. And that's the exact message I want to share. Do it. You know, you don't have to be big, you don't have to be the fittest, the best equipped. Just go check it out and then, you know, figure it out how you want to change things, or if you like it, or what's the next step.
This is something I've realised a lot, and I sometimes now, when I guide bike rides, like my last night speech, I'll say, you never know who is watching. Like you might be a fairly small unfit person who goes for a short bike ride and it's a bit further than they went before, and you post a picture on social media and it doesn't feel like a big deal. But the cousin of your brother-in-law might happen to see that picture and it might just spark something, and he might think, well, if she did that, hey, maybe I could go and do this thing. Mm-hmm. And you might do something that's extremely big and impressive and impress even more people. Or you might do something that turns out really, really badly, like the majority of my rides have not gone to plan. People still kind of want to see that stuff, and people still get something out of it, and I do too. I've actually realised that although the failures are kind of annoying at the time, they tend to be the rides where I learn the most lessons and get the really good stories. Like no one wants to hear about my ride that went well. So even if it's bad at the time, you get a much longer heritage of really good chat afterwards. Lael, I wanted to kind of go back in time a bit. We've all got our cyclist origin story. And I feel like yours is actually not that well known. You just kind of appeared in about 2015 and started winning things. Were you always that person? Were you always into bikes? Were you one of these kids that people would have looked at and be like, it'll definitely be her? Or was your route a bit more circuitous?
Yeah, so I grew up in Alaska. I learned how to ride a bike as a kid, but that was about it. I played soccer and basketball. And I started riding again when I was 20 to get to and from work. I was working at a brewery 6 kilometers from where I lived. And before that, I had walked everywhere. I've never owned a car. I don't know how to drive. So the bicycle was like my first real vehicle. And we don't really have public transportation. So I got a bike, rode to work, had to ride up a really big hill to get home. And that was super, super hard. And I've never forgotten that feeling that you were just like, I just can't get up there. Why would anybody do this? But within like a short amount of time, I had like a very oversized borrowed bike and I was riding all over town. And then I wanted to go visit my sister who lived like 80K away at the time. I was in Tacoma, Washington. She lived in Seattle. I usually took the bus, but I was like so broke that I didn't even have the $2.50 for bus fare. And then I was like, what if I rode my bike there? I was like, oh my God, I could do it. Then this was, 2006 or something. So then there was no smartphones or navigation. So I just printed out like a big stack of directions turn by turn and followed them and got there. And
well done.
Yeah, I made it. And then, but this was like the biggest deal. Really it was. I was like, oh my gosh, I did that. And immediately, like, as I'm getting closer and closer to my sister, I was like, if I could ride across town, I could ride across the country, like the US. And then that's what I did like 2 months later. I was like, whoa, I can imagine what this is like. Like, you go town to town, you carry a tent, you sleep every night, you ride like, 100K a day. And that's what you do. And it takes time, but I was like, this is perfect for me. It's a vehicle where I can carry stuff. So then I did that first trip from Montreal, Canada to Key West, Florida, the end of the road in the east. And then I was out of money and I got a job as a pedicab driver, bicycle taxi, and a job in a restaurant. And then within 2 months, I was back on the road riding across the South. And then riding up the West Coast and like just obsessively riding for travel, mixing it up, going down to Mexico, riding in Alaska where I was from, and then ultimately into Europe, and spent 7 years doing this, just working half the year to save as much money as I could, living extremely cheaply, and then riding half the year. And you can really live on the bike pretty cheaply if you try. Rice and beans is not expensive. You live in a tent. You do everything to not spend money, but it's super cool for what you get to see. I think my biggest expense were plane tickets. And then, so yeah, during this trajectory, I was like, started riding more dirt routes and following bikepacking race routes as a tour. So I was like, oh, these are great access to riding a really neat route in a different country, and I'd never find it otherwise. And towards the end of this, I was riding in Israel. I spent 3 months in the Middle East and was riding this Holy Land Challenge, which was a 1,400K mountain bike race across Israel. And I was just touring it, and then I realized, oh, I'm actually gonna be here when the race happens. Why don't I just try and race it, see what happens? And I had like a $400 mountain bike, platform pedals, running shoes, cotton t-shirt, and I was the only woman that showed up at the start. There were like 40 of us, and they were like, are you gonna make it through the first day? And then, of course, and then I was like, rage. Oh yeah, I'm gonna make it through the first day. And then by the end of the first day, I was winning the whole race by like 40K. And they were like, these guys just like lost their mind. They're like, how is this happening? Like, she's a woman. They just couldn't believe it. I had a spot tracker to show my location. People started coming to find me because they were like, she's not real. This cannot be. Because like in Israel, women aren't really athletic. They're not like into sports, and then I'm a woman that shows up with this total junk bike. They had like really great gear and I had nothing, but I was like, I'm gonna win, and so that was my start. And then actually this way I was like, okay, I'm gonna race this Holy Land Challenge, and if it really goes great and I love it, I'm gonna fly back to Alaska, and then a week later I'm gonna leave from home and ride from Anchorage, like something like 3,500K to Banff, Canada, touring, and then I'm going to take a week off, and then I'm going to race the Tour Divide. And that's exactly what I did. Because then you're like, well, this is what I'm going to do, and then you know, and then you do it. So that's what I did, 2015. So that's 6 years ago.
So the obvious question is, do you ever get tired?
I do. I'm pretty tired right now. No, I mean, I think I get so excited about ideas that I just have to see them out, and then sometimes it's a little over the top. I just can't stop, you know, because it's like then you see this thing and you just want to see it through.
We had dinner just before this, and I was sitting opposite Lael and her wife, overhearing a conversation about, we're quite tired, we really need to take a break, we really need to have a couple of months off, that's what we need to do, but there's this race, and then there's this other race, and I thought, I can see how this goes. Yeah. I think Lael's wife is somewhere here in the audience and would appreciate a beer if anyone wants to buy one for her. So I think my next question is, we've discussed this before. A couple of weeks ago now, Lael and I found ourselves riding up the Col d'Izoard together. This was a tactical error on my part. So we were with a group, we started up the Izoard, and then 5 minutes in, I realised we'd ridden away from the group we were with. So here I am, riding uphill, a very long hill, alongside one of the strongest endurance cyclists in the world, having a conversation. This is a really long climb. So I asked her loads of questions. And it seemed to go quite well, I thought, that climb. That was great, good climb. Great chat. And one of the questions was about racing and competitiveness. And I don't think this is anything we really got to the bottom of, because you said, you know, you love being out there and just enjoying the world. It's not just about racing and winning, it's about genuinely loving being on the bike. But you also want to race and win. Yeah. And it got me thinking about competitiveness and how there are lots of different sorts. You know, you could be competitive against yourself. You can be competitive where you just, you know, you set an arbitrary target, or you can be competitive against other people. You can want to be the best, or you can just want to be in the ebb and flow of trying really hard. So this is a kind of a deeper question, but how does competitiveness work for you? Are you 100% competitive, or does it come and go?
I mean, I think if I'm in a race, I want to give my best effort. And then if that results in me winning, then that's awesome. But I'll know if I didn't do my best. So even if I won and I didn't do my best, maybe I'm not happy with it. So it's like I want to give my best effort. And then ultimately I look at this stuff. So in bike pack racing, you have a fixed start and then a finish point, and then it's a continuous clock. So some of my races, like the Trans Am that I won in 2016, it took 18 days and 10 minutes. You're out there for over 2 weeks. What do you do during 2 weeks? You're a human, you're covering distance, you're making decisions, decision to decision. So I think that's like what comes into this racing is like making the best choices you can. And then I think, of course, like I actually really enjoy most of it. But then there's also so much sacrifice that goes in. You don't sleep, you don't eat good food, you like are doing everything to progress forward. So I think like moment to moment, I'm like, stay on the bike. Don't get off your bike. If you get off your bike, change your clothing, move your snacks around. Like do like 5 different things, multitask everything so you can get back on your bike. And I think that's like kind of the urgency and obsessiveness that's required to have like a good result in that specific kind of competition. So I do all that. But then along the way, it's like while I am actually on my bike and I don't have to take care of my needs, my mind just like totally wanders and I'm thinking about a different race or a different ride or my childhood or whatever else is going on. And then I'm back to reality. I need to eat something. I need to change my clothes. I need to buy food. I need to find water. I need to find somewhere to sleep. You know, so you're back and forth. But I think I never get bored of being out there. You know, and sometimes I'm riding like 19 hours a day. And then it's like, if you ride 19 hours a day, you feel terrible. Like you actually feel terrible. There is no other way you could do it. Like your feet hurt, your hands hurt, everything hurts, but then it hurts for 10 minutes and then it doesn't hurt anymore. You're like, wow, this is possible? You know, so then you find your own limits like along the way. Everybody does. And, you know, and then you have like this extreme level of camaraderie with your other racers because they're all doing that too. They're like rushing through the gas station to buy food as fast as they can. they're like, doing all these different things, but then they're also seeing like the most beautiful sunsets, the most beautiful sunrises. They're like riding through a lightning storm too. So then you're like, we're actually kind of doing this together, but we're all crazy. But it's also like definitely worth part of it at least. Like I'm not saying everybody should race an ultra distance race, but I do think everybody should ride through the night sometime. Because you learn so much about yourself and you see so many different things. You see different animals in the night. You see the sun rise in a different way, and it's super, super cool. And that's, I think, attainable for everybody. And I think you do that, and then you decide what else you want to do. Yeah.
How have all your processes of racing changed over the years? Because I know with me, the first couple of races I didn't get it quite right. There were certain things I got minorly wrong and certain things I got majorly wrong, like not sleeping. Don't try that. And then there's little things like knowing where to put all the different bits in your bag so you can access them easily. And then I have certain mental processes that I've evolved to mind game myself into keeping going when I don't want to. We talked a bit about your very, very earliest race, which sounded like it didn't go completely perfectly. How have you sort of learned and developed, and how have you dialed in all your different methods and processes?
Yeah, I mean, it changed. I started and I had a flip phone at first. No smartphone, no way to connect to anybody. I mean, the first race I had like 8-speed, what's it when it's not like instant shifting?
Friction shifting?
Friction shifting. Total mess. My hands really felt bad after that one. But I mean, now I'm like riding with electronic shifting and the nicest stuff, but then it's also like, I think half the weight I carry is like to charge everything I have. Then you're like, what am I doing? I'm sleeping in the dirt, and then I'm like, I better charge my shifting and my Wahoo and my phone and all this stuff. It's like,
it's evolved, hasn't it?
It has changed. But it hasn't really changed that much. Basically my overall idea is stay on the bike, and then I pick the races I do by like either somebody invites me to their race because they're so proud of the route they put together. And then that's super special because it's like a treasure map to their home. Like 1,000 kilometers across Switzerland through like my friend Willie's favorite mountain passes. Or I want to race around Rwanda with like locals, and they're developing a bike packing community, and that's super cool. So it's like the routes are more special, and then my ideal setup is to go ahead of time and tour the whole route with my wife, Rue, so we can both see it together, and then I go back and race it. Because like these trips, I feel super grateful I get to do them. I get to see these places, and I don't want to just burn through. I want to spend the time. So if I can do it twice, even better. And I'm not going to get sick of doing it. I could do it a third time. It's like every ride you see something different, and it has you, and then you have memories of the past time, and that's really special too. So I mean, as far as like kit or stuff, like, I don't know, you have to navigate somehow. So figure out how to do that. Everything's gotten easier too. You have like a Wahoo, you have a track from Komoot, and you just plug and go. But then it's like, how do you want to spend your time when you're actually out there? The equipment's less important, strategy's the same, stay on the bike. Now I'm sleeping 4 hours. Sometimes I've tried to sleep less. It's hard, it's scary. If the races will take like less than, the longest I've gone without sleeping is 51 hours for a race. It was super bad. 2 nights in a row on single track, really, really technical on the Arizona Trail. And at one point I couldn't focus my eyes, so I laid down for 7 minutes meditating, and I got up and it worked. It was incredible. And then I was like, I'm fine, I'm golden. Obviously I wasn't, but I was better than I had been. Improvement is good. But yeah, it's like, I play around with all this stuff because I'm always focused on economizing time. But to be there in the first place, it has to be super beautiful, and it has to mean something to me, or I wouldn't push myself so hard.
I really like what you said about touring the route before you ride it, because partly, yes, I agree, like most of the self-supported ultra-distance races, the route is someone's baby, and they have tuned that for you over many years or even decades of riding, and it's a real privilege and a joy to get to ride these routes, and sometimes a shame that you go through quite quickly. So to get to see it more than once probably the best way of doing it. It was something I really enjoyed about the Torino-Nice rally, that we went through some areas where I'd ridden before, and where I had really important memories, like from the first time I raced the Transcontinental. And I got to see those places again on a completely different day, in a different direction, with different company. And it was a much more profound experience, having already been there once. And then, of course, other places I got to discover new routes. So with that lengthy preamble, my question was, from all of your adventures, are there any places that are high on the list to go back to and explore more?
To go back to, I don't know, but Torino-Nice Rally will go back and host another women's event there next year, probably in September. So be on the lookout for that. Please come, women. It's super cool. But places, I mean, beautiful places. I've been, now I'm more thinking about places I haven't been. Because now I'm like on this track where I'm like, if I'm going to go there, I'm going there for 5 or 6 weeks, like Kyrgyzstan. Absolutely fantastic riding, super beautiful. Places on my list for the future, I really want to go to Georgia, but it's super high elevation, so it's like, it's special to be there. We just did a trip in Iceland. I would definitely go back, but it's super windy and hard. So disclaimer. But yeah, love to ride there again. Anywhere where there are mountains, and then I guess I don't know, we have hardly ridden in the UK, so time to be here, pretty special.
Go to Wales.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, that I should go to Wales and it's better there.
So yes, you should definitely go to Wales, as should everyone, but only in small groups, because the sheep don't like big crowds. Neither do I. So my next question is, I think, something that everybody secretly wants to know, which is, how do you train? Do you train?
I've never really trained. I've never had a power meter. But I have found that in the past few years, I ride more with more people and at a faster pace, and that's awesome for training. I did some guiding with the cyclist menu in Arizona, and my job was to ride with the fastest people every day, which I did that for 4 weeks in a row. Super great training. But really, it's like I feel like I ride by feeling. So if I want to go fast, I go fast. But then in the end, then what I'm good at is just climbing mountains. I'm not so good at the flats. But, just trying to keep up with others is good training. But otherwise, I just ride, because I always want to ride. Every day I wake up and I want to ride. So that's about it. And it's good transportation.
Mm. Yeah, I feel very similar. I also don't train, but I ride a heck of a lot. I think it's really good to hear someone else also does that, because I occasionally, when I'm surrounded by wealthy men in lycra talking about their power meters, I start to feel a bit like I might be getting it wrong, especially when they ask me how many watts I'm putting out, and I have to ask somebody to explain what that means. So now I can say I follow the gospel of Lael Wilcox. She doesn't train. Do you know what a power meter is?
I actually have one on my bike, but I've never used it. But I will someday. But I don't know, I think the thing is we're all looking for different things. We're looking for our best results, we're looking for our best experience. Whatever enables you to have that, go for it, and that will change. And then the change is totally fine. It's like I started on a fixed gear bike, and then I had a steel hardtail, and now I have something else, and these are all like good things, and then we can revert to what we had in the past. But I think being afraid of change, or being afraid of accepting what you want to do is like, then you're just stagnant. So it's like, if you want to change what you have, then do it, try it out, give it up. Like this is all a good part of the process, and I'm super happy to do that. I'm super happy along the way that I get to do that. But I don't think I'll ever get away from wanting to ride super long distances, because you pull out a map and you look at point A to point B, and then you imagine what's it like to ride across Russia. Who knows? I mean, some people do. I don't. Then I want to do it, and then I get there and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. But it's like you have to see for yourself. And it's never going to be as important to anybody else as it is to you. So follow that thing, and then that will change.
So I know that everybody here has a lot of questions for Lael, so I'm kind of hogging the mic a bit, but I've got a couple more, and then I'm going to open the floor to everyone else. So the next question I wanted to ask, you were attempting a Tour Divide record this summer and sadly had to stop because of the fumes from the forest fires, which were just making it impossible. And this is, along with quite a few other bike races we all know of, one more example of how climate change is really starting to affect everything we do and how we do it. How do you think we're all going to have to change what we do over the next, say, 10, 20 years? Because, for example, maybe we should all stop flying to do races and just ride the entire distance from our front door to wherever we need to go. You know, there's GB Duro in the UK now has a no-fly policy. So if you live in Australia and you want to do that race, you've got to ride there and then race, which you'd be great at.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What should we be doing, and what are you doing
to mitigate that? I mean, that's a really sad reality, is that the American West is burning. Every year the fire season happens earlier. So the Tour Divide is a route that travels from Canada to Mexico through the Rockies. It's about 4,400 all on dirt. And, you know, at this point, it's usually, you have to wait until June for the snow to all melt for you to ride it, because it's very high elevation. A lot of it is above 3,000 meters. But then now the fire season is encroaching, where by July, August, a lot of this forest is burning and the air quality is just terrible. And there are so many things that you could do. And sometimes I think about this, and I think about, like, how sad it is to witness this land, but then I also think if I wasn't there, I probably wouldn't care as much either. So I think that riding through places gives you firsthand experience of what you care about and what decisions will you make in the future. And that's not just one specific thing. It's not just eating plant-based. It's not just not flying. It's not just, I don't know. At the end of the day, if you look at all these solutions, you're like, okay, I'm going to sit inside my house and grow my own food from the windowsill and not exist, you know? And it's like, we do exist, but we can make better decisions about, like, using what we have, caring about what we have, not wasting. I mean, every single day we make 100 decisions about what we use during the day and what we care about and what messages we share. The other aspect of that, though, for me, is also we do get into a situation where we point fingers and criticize and say, this is the wrong thing, this shouldn't happen, but we could also think about what are solutions and share encouraging words and invite other people on a bike ride, because at this point I think that is a positive way to be outside and exchange ideas and be fairly safe. So, you know, ultimately when I, like, get down about this stuff, I'm like, well, I'm riding my bike, that's a good thing, I'm pretty happy.
You don't drive, do you?
I don't drive.
Me neither. So, if nothing else, there's that. I just get lifts. So final question. I think it's given a lot of people a great deal of hope and joy that you're very open about being married to a woman, and that it seems to be an absolute non-issue. As far as I'm aware, since you announced your engagement and marriage to Rue, I've not seen anyone online making any sort of fuss the way they would have until about 2.5 years ago, which is really wonderful news. So it did make me think, perhaps I don't need to ask this question, perhaps this is now a complete non-issue and we don't even need to mention it. However, for one thing, I've been out for 20 years, things have changed quite a lot in that time. It didn't used to be like this. And the very fact that a woman can happily talk about being married to another woman and no one makes a fuss is because people fought for this for generations in these very streets. But on top of that, I look around me, and basically a lot of the cycling scene is kind of run by gay women. It's great. Hi, everyone. However, like, where are the gay men? And we don't really see very many trans and non-binary people around here. It's quite noticeable that there are quite a lot of high-powered gay women and female couples in pro cycling, in all different disciplines, and on the scene generally. It's very, very rare to see anyone else from the LGBTQ community. So this is not a question, this is more just a discussion. Like, how can we, from our position of apparent power and centrality, try and bring the rest of the gang in? I don't know. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
Well, let's celebrate it. Woo! I do think for me personally, I'm married to Rue. I met her 4.5 years ago, and I absolutely fell in love. And that was my decision, and it wasn't, I never really thought about the politics of it, but I do feel super grateful to be myself and free and happy to be that way. And it's amazing. You know, it's like I get to live my best life, my dreams. But I do feel like I think about this a lot, where I just want people to feel like they can be themselves, and the best way I've found is to be myself and share my story openly, and the faults I have and the things I do, because it's definitely not perfect. And you know, it's like at dinner I spilled sauce on my pants, and that's just happens every single day. You know, I just can't get out the door. So but that's okay. It's like, don't stop yourself from showing up because you're embarrassed. It's okay. But it's super cool that we can be married and I can be happy. And I'm really happy about that. And I want that for everybody else too. And I want them to feel like they're invited to the bike ride. They should come, they should be there. Like the opposite of what I want is like people didn't feel welcome. So everything I do, I try to welcome people, and you know, often I get it wrong, but I think if you get it wrong, you learn that you got it wrong and you keep trying. And that's the best you can do.
Thanks. So I'm going to hand over to everyone else now. I think we still only have one mic, so I think I might just give it to you.
Okay.
But can I start off by finding, does anybody have any questions? Oh, great, there's someone right at the back. You're going to have to shout, and I'm going to repeat it for those at the other back.
How do you stay so positive?
How do you stay so positive, Lael?
I don't. No, I mostly do, because that's like the aspect of life I want to see, and then I actually am so happy with what I'm doing. But I definitely have the personality where I have huge mood swings, but I think the more I ride and the more I do what I love, the happier I am. And then I just have to stay there. Yeah.
Any more questions? There's somebody there.
Do you ever feel scared when you're like alone in the night, camping in the dark in a different country?
Yeah.
So the question was, do you ever feel scared when you're camping alone in the night in the dark?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I don't know. I guess I try to pick a place that feels good to be sleeping. And then maybe I found over time that I've picked really bad places, because you get tired and you're like, oh, I can sleep here, it's fine. And then you're like, oh, this was a terrible place when you wake up and it's light out. I have started during some races, I now listen to audiobooks through the night, because it keeps me more alert. And then you're like so engaged in the story that you're not worried about being scared, which is pretty fun. But yeah, I think that's the thing, is like, especially when you're alone, you get into these cycles of fear or bad feelings, and then you have to break it somehow, because like you'll dig yourself into such a bad hole. And maybe like a way to start with that is to ride with somebody else through the night, or just do it and scare yourself and figure it out. But you know, I actually do feel fine, but I do think that everyone's senses are more on edge in the dark. This is just a human thing. You're afraid in the night, or especially when it's cold. You feel like, I should go inside, I shouldn't be here, this is wrong. But that's like just you thinking that. It's not, the situation generally hasn't changed that much. I have stopped ultra distance road racing because of the risk. So riding through the night, like the Trans Am, 18 days, 18 nights basically, riding through the night in traffic. Yeah, I mean, at a time when like people could be drinking, they're not as alert, they can't see as well, the risk is just too high to get hit by a car. So I kind of made a deal where I stopped doing that. And then if I'm on a dirt road or on a trail, I don't feel nearly as bad, but that's usually when I see all the animals, is in the night, like my light shines on their eyeballs. And that's a little freaky.
Tell us about the mountain lion.
Yeah, so this past Tour Divide, when I had to quit, I think 3 days into the ride, it was midnight and I'm almost to the top of a pass and my light shined on a set of eyes and I was like, I just immediately stopped because there's an animal there, and then looking at it while I was standing there, realized it was a mountain lion, which is something I've never seen before. And I'm from Alaska, I've seen hundreds of bears, moose, all these other animals, but mountain lion you almost never see because they're like a lot smarter, sneakier. They know when you're there before you're there. And then I just stood there just watching this, and actually at the time I was just thinking, I am so tired. I was super happy to get over this pass, and then I have like another 30K to get to the town, and I just want to go to sleep, and why is this mountain lion here? But there's nothing I could do about it. I just stood there for 15 minutes just watching, like, what's she gonna do? And then I'm hearing like this chirping of like, I think like baby mountain lions behind her, so I think she was like protecting her babies. And finally I'm like, okay, I've been standing here forever. I start pushing my bike, just nudging it a little bit forward, like maybe we can make some progress. And then she started walking ahead of me, like leading me away for the next 10 minutes, walking, and then I'm walking behind with the bike. And my thought was like, okay, if she comes back at me, just turn right around and go down the mountain, and then I'll be fine, you know, because like that's the only thing I could do. And eventually she gets to the top of the climb, and then she just walks into the brush, and then I just went down, and it worked. And then I'm like, I'm still 30K from the town. And then what's gonna happen next? Oh yeah, and then I get over the top, and then I start seeing this tail flapping in front of me, black and white, and it was a skunk.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh no, a skunk? And then it just ran, and then it just shot off to the side, and I was like, okay, whew. And then like I get down to the town, and I'm down in this town where actually this is Ovando, Montana, so it's on the Great Divide route, and a woman in June was touring the route, and they've always had this really cool open policy about people camping right in the town area. Like they have a little teepee set up and an old fake covered wagon and a store, and they're like, just camp right here, it's a really nice town. And a woman was camped there that was, I think, 60 or 65, and a grizzly bear killed her in this small town. So the grizzly bear showed up, and then they tried to scare it away, and then it came back and killed this woman. And so then this town, they had opened their doors of the church where we could sleep, anybody riding the route could sleep in there. So then I was like, I'll get to the town, I'll sleep in the church. I get to the church, and then some like weird bike touring guy was like, what are you doing here? I was like, will this ever stop? Can I go to sleep? You know, it's like, but this is like the story of like racing and touring is like you just keep approaching these new situations where crazy things keep happening, and then you're like, well, let's deal with this. What's next? But then, yeah, I got some sleep there, which was really nice. But yeah, I don't know. It's like you're going to see stuff out there. But I mean, it's also, when I think about the animals, I'm like, it's a real treasure that we still have these huge animals. Like talking about climate change, talking about like all these problems, it's like, it's amazing that I see bears. It's amazing that I see moose in Alaska. Like this is something that may not last forever, and it's a little scary, but it's also really, really cool to see. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you feel about social media? Like, do you love to do it because you feel like you're potentially inspiring people, or is it kind of like an obligation that you have to do because of sponsors? And do you think there's any positive and negative drawbacks to that kind of whole like world of it? Because it can be a mess and a great thing and an awful thing.
Yeah, the question's about social media, if I like it or don't like it. I love it. I think it's so cool. I mean, but of course I love it because my wife Rue is taking beautiful photos that I get to share where I'm like, this is amazing. You know, if I was running the whole show, it wouldn't be nearly as good. Nobody would even look at it. But yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that we can connect with people all over the world. I think that's really special. You could say, hey, I'm coming here, meet me there, you know, and like you find your community through it. Yeah, it's scary. The part that I don't like about social media is that people are sometimes like very mean. They can be like their meanest person on social media and without consequence. Like, or it's like the room for interpreting things in a negative way. You're like, oh, what they mean by that? You know, like that kind of stuff. The negativity I don't like, but I do love like the sharing and then the excitement you see from your community. But then I'm like looking at my social media and I'm like, oh, it's just bikes. Like maybe I should like wake up and look at something else. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you say you get a lot of your positivity from being able to get out on your bike. I currently cannot get out on my bike at all. But how do you kind of deal with injury and that time when you like can't ride?
Yeah, the question is dealing with injury and how can you stay positive through injury? It sucks. It's the worst. I mean, I actually am like a very, I don't take a lot of risks riding because I don't want to crash, which will definitely hinder my mountain biking skills because I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. Because I want to ride my bike every single day. But actually the reason I became an endurance rider is because I was injured from running. First I was a runner and I had an Achilles injury. And I started borrowing my mom's road bike. This was in 2014. And riding, I was living in Alaska and riding as far as I could on my 2 days off of work as a bartender. And then I was like, I'll ride to the next town. It's 300K away, I can do it. And I was so frustrated that I couldn't run that I rode farther and farther. And that's like what brought me to cycling, which I think is good because running is just, eventually you just get injured just from doing the sport. You know, cycling you crash and then you get injured. So, you know, I have a better way of doing that now. But then, yeah, I guess, you know, then I'm like, well, if I can't ride, can I walk? Can I do something else? I think I would just be like that nutty person that's just doing, you know, wheeling myself around somehow. Because I just want, but I guess if you know, basically it's like, it's not just the movement, but it's the time spent outside. So anyway, you can kind of do that. Like that brings me back to being happy. But it's super hard. And then the other thing to think about is that it's not going to be forever. So then, because you get so focused on this one experience, but then, you know, 2 months later, you're fine. That, I mean, the human body is amazing. We can recover. You know, we can heal. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know what I would do now if I couldn't ride my bike. I'll deal with it when it happens. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, you didn't set out to gain like the recognition, well-deserved recognition you got from setting all of these records and stuff. Does that create a pressure that takes away from the enjoyment? And if so, how do you deal with that pressure?
Is there pressure from getting recognition for setting records and having good results? No, I'd love to do it. And then I'm like, can I do it? Yeah, and then the thing is like, if I don't get the best result, there's always a story behind that. What happened? Why did something go wrong? Or what went wrong? Or, you know, what ultimately went right? Because if a race takes 2 weeks, sometimes you have time to make it up too. You know, so then I try not to give up because you can like get 4 days into something and feel so bad about how it's going. And then 7 days later, you're like, it's going great. So, you know, just sticking with it. Yeah, and not feeling bad, but yeah, pressure, whatever. People can say whatever. That's the thing I like about results, is that everybody talks about who's a good rider, who does what, but then results is like, that's just how it happened, you know? That's the list of the times, and that's it. And then you could share your stories about how it went down, and then share that with the people that were out there too. It's pretty cool, yeah. Yeah.
You said you don't do a lot of physical training for your rides. Do you think that mental strength is more important than the kind of riding you do?
I think, I've thought about this a lot. The question was, is mental strength really important in the riding I do? I don't do that much physical training, but I mean, I actually do tons of physical training. I'm riding all the time. I'm doing planks every other day, 100 push-ups a day, you know, all these little things to like get where I am. And then I've thought about it because people tell me, oh, it's all mental what you do. And then I'm like, well, you try riding 200 miles a day and tell me it's all mental. It's all physical. But I guess the mental part is you don't give up. But it's so physical. Like you are trashing your body every single moment, basically. And then just trying to, I guess the thing is like for the racing, you try to recover somehow. And like, how do you do it? Sleep 4 hours, you know, eat something specific, or how you ride your bike. You like look for methods to do that. But I think I think it's all physical ultimately, actually. Like, I've thought about this for a long time because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm happy, that's why I do well. But then I'm like, well, your body has to keep doing it too. Yeah.
So I just had a question. Emily brought up about how it's mainly not the whole of the LGBT community that's involved. But I was here last week for for the culture talk, and the audience is like obviously very different. And I think that people of colour aren't really represented in ultra cycling. And I was wondering, there's like great scholarships going on, but what can we do to increase the diversity within the sport?
Yeah. The question was that last week there was a great event and there was a different audience group, and how do we increase diversity in sport? And I mean, I think the way I get people to a ride is I invite them there. So invite more people, invite more of everybody that you want to see there, of all ages, of all colors, of all backgrounds. Invite somebody specifically. That's all I can do. I can't speak from like a higher point than that. And then everybody take photos of each other doing these things and share them. You know, and I actually don't do that part. Rue does that, but it's like if you don't see it, then it's almost like it doesn't exist. So do it, show it. Think on a personal level about all this stuff, because we are capable of all the solutions too, actually. Or we're capable of the solutions we can provide. And then maybe it'll be better, yeah.
Can I just use this moment, I was going to do this anyway, to make an important plug for a scholarship that I think has one more week before the deadline. So Stayer Cycles have set up an ultra-distance scholarship to improve diversity and representation in the sort of cycling that we both do. I think there's already been quite a few applicants, which is super exciting. But if you are interested, or if you're pretending that you're not interested, or if you know someone who is pretending they're not interested but actually would, Stayer Cycles, I will Instagram something after this so you can find it through my profile, and you will get a bicycle, you will get coaching, you will get mentorship. I think some of the mentors are actually here in this room, one of them is there. And it is an extraordinary opportunity, and for the rest of us, it means we get to watch some really exciting new people come into this field. So that is one thing that hopefully we can all support to make a difference. Sorry, back to Lael.
Yeah.
Hey, so you mentioned it earlier about like camping your first time running on distance. What was it like your first ever time camping on your own while cycling? Or what was you remember that first moment where you had to bivvy down? Like, were there trepidations? Like, what was that first sensation like?
Yeah, I think, but the question was, what was my first time camping while cycling? And like, how was that to feel? And I think the first time I actually did it solo, I like got off a shift working as a bartender and thought I could just go out to the woods and sleep out and then get back to work the next day. And that's exactly what I did. And I had like borrowed my dad's tent and I slept on a bridge. And I was like, I'm just gonna get as far as I can towards this mountain and just, you know, camp out for the night. But I think that was like something I just wanted to do anyway, so it wasn't surprising. But I do think that's the way to do it, like not necessarily that, but like pick a route, something that's not unfamiliar, and just bring camping equipment and try it out. You know, and then you also have to figure out, at that time I just had like a really junky mountain bike and a backpack with a tent in it. That works. It's not the best, but you know, it'll get you there. So yeah, but I don't think I was like uneasy about camping. I just didn't really think about it. I think I was the most scared about getting lost, because I'm a terrible navigator. There was no GPS, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna ride this one street for like half the way, and then this one street for the other half the way, and that's it. It's pretty easy in Alaska because there aren't that many roads, but I was still like worried about it. Yeah. Yeah.
I've had moments on the bike where I felt terrible, and then like 5 miles later felt like complete joy. Have you had like moments on the bike where you've just been like, I am so like joyful in this moment, and like, could you pick a moment where you've had that emotion?
Yeah, absolutely. The question was, when I feel joy on the bike, And especially from the spectrum of feeling awful beforehand. I mean, that's the coolest gift, is that you feel absolutely terrible and then you feel great all of a sudden. I feel like I have that every race I do. I feel like I get that more and more the more I ride, because it's like I have the memory of that too. So I don't think about the bad stuff as much anymore. I don't even care about it. I think I've gotten to a point where I feel a lot of pain and I just don't care. Like, I'm still happy to be here. Yeah, I feel like my knees are going to break off, but I'm still happy to be here. You know, it's like the more you do it, the more it becomes like breathing, I guess. And I feel like some of the best rides are just commuting, because you're like, point A to point B, I really don't want to go outside right now. And then you get there and you're like, hey, I made it. And then everyone else is like, I don't care.
I remember that.
Anybody else?
Do you listen music or podcast on speaker when you are riding?
What was that?
Do you listen music or podcast when you are riding?
Yeah, the question is, do I listen to music or podcasts while I'm riding? Absolutely, and that's another thing that's great at pain management, is just put in some pop music. Feel like $1 million. Yeah, and then I listen to audiobooks too. So stories. Sometimes I look for the longest ones possible. So I'm like, oh, that's going to be good. That'll last a few days. 40 hours? Great. But yeah, I didn't have a smartphone, and now I do, and I'm like, what a treat that you can listen to a story while you ride your bike through somewhere different. Very, very fun. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
So when you're doing really long rides and you're constantly tired, what is the point? What's the thing that makes you decide this is the moment that I'm going to stop and take some rest?
Yeah, the question was, when I'm racing super long and I'm constantly tired, what's the point where I decide to stop and take some rest? And I've gotten to a point where if it's a 10-day race or something like that, I'll get into more of a habit of sleeping early and then setting an alarm and then waking up in the night to continue. Because I think in the beginning, I just ride later and later into the night, but then your head starts thinking, when am I going to stop? Where am I going to sleep? So then I'm like, now I'll just go to sleep at 9 o'clock, and then I'll wake up at, 1 in the morning and start again. And then at that point, I'm committed to, like, I've gotten my sleep, it's time to go. Because you have to ride through the dark anyway, so it doesn't really matter when you stop. The clock doesn't know any different. It's how much time did you stop moving. So then I feel better that I stopped earlier, gave myself the rest, and then I just have to go on. It's hard though. Sometimes like your heart rate is so high that you need the rest, but you're not ready for it. You could keep riding, but your results might go down. So because now I'm like, oh, I'll sleep 4 hours and I'll ride faster. So I've started kind of meditating. I try to kind of like breathe deeply and sink into the ground, and that's such a cool feeling when you're so exhausted to do that. But yeah, I found that 4 hours of sleep, I recover, I feel better, I ride faster. Mentally, I feel better and fresher. Because I've like kind of played around with less. Like the last 3 nights of the Trans Am, I slept a total of 6 hours, and I was already sleep deprived because I wanted to win. And I did. But I think my breaking point is if my eyes can't focus, then I stop. Because that's awful. Like, you can't actually see, and people like push further than that. They sleep less than that, but I'm like, yeah, at that point, I'm just in a kind of a garbage existence. I don't want to live there. But yeah.
Last one.
Ask about sleep deprivation. Like, is it something you train for? Because like loads of races, people push through like 51 hours. It's not far after a while, which is not a good idea. But do you train for that, or is it something you kind of deal with and you push through? And second part, what's your favourite snack to put in your top?
Yeah.
Chips and salt, but like what's top best?
What's the best? Okay, so the first question was sleep deprivation. Do I train for it? Absolutely not. No, it's terrible. I sleep as much as I want all the time. And then I just am like, okay, I have to get through this. It's fine. We'll see how it goes. Because that's probably the most unhealthy aspect of this whole sport is the sleep deprivation. But it's also part of the competition. You just have to do it. And then the best snack in my top 2 bag is always changing. you know, French fries are good, but they're super bad when they get cold. And then I still eat them anyway because it's all I have. So then I'm like looking for foods that are not bad cold. Oh, you know what I've done? Like pizza was always my go-to, but then this past summer what I found is that I could take pints of ice cream and store them in there until they melt and then drink them. The best.
I've got to try that.
Yeah, if you just try it out. Better than chocolate milk.
I kind of want to hear more about this, but I think we have to stop now because some of you will want to be getting home. Lael and I are probably going to be here till the very end. So if you want to ask us any more questions about ice cream or anything else, you may. I am supposed to be signing books if anyone actually wants me to, so I'll be over there near the books. I reckon you should also get Lael to sign my books. They will be worth a lot more then.
I can't do that.
I would love you to. I would be honoured. Maybe what you could do is get a book, get me to sign it, get Lael to sign it, and then try and get as many other female ultracyclists to sign it as possible. I would recommend that. They're great people to meet. So apart from that, there's nothing remaining but to say a very big thank you to Rapha for hosting us, to all of you for coming, because this has been an astoundingly good audience, and to Lael Wilcox. Shall we go?
We'll take all our drinks.